Sorry. No worries. He's going to sit in the front row, right? Just march on the left.
Good evening. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Thank you all so much for coming, and welcome to the debate for the Lamoille-1 seat in Vermont House of Representatives for the Stowe seat, which for the first time in 12 years has a challenge. So today we have Representative Heidi Scheuermann on the right, and on the left side, representing the Democratic Party, we have Marina Meerburg. Great. So yes, I'm Hannah Marshall-Ramondo. I'm the managing editor of the Stowe Reporter, news and Waterbury Record. This is Tom Gardner, the news editor and news reporter of the Stowe Reporter and the News and Waterbury Record. We also have Kaylee Cross of the yeah, thanks so much for coming. Here's how this is going to work. I will introduce both candidates, and we will do a coin flip and have the official coin to see who will speak first. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes for an opening statement. They'll both give their opening statements, and then we will ask them a number of questions. And we had asked in advance if anyone wanted to submit questions, and we got a great response from residents. So a lot of our questions are based on questions that were asked by you and by people who couldn't be here tonight but want their voices heard. Then after we go through some of those, people will open up the floor for questions from the audience. There's a microphone over there to make sure it's working before you start. And this is a debate between the candidates, not the candidates and the audience. So no speeches from the audience, please. You're not arguing with the candidates. This is to see their views and how they differ or are the same. So yes, please keep it civil. I will not hesitate to grown up focus. Yeah, so anything else, Tom? Great. So we'll begin. I'd like to do Kaylee has a tip. What? Oh, wait, no.
We'll have an impartial part of my objective report called the call.
Okay.
Who's what?
Oh, yeah.
So, Ed is Heidi, H. Yeah.
Sure.
Ed is Heidi. Does that sound agreeable?
Ed is Heidi. Yes, ma'am.
We did not practice.
It is tails.
It is tails. Marina will go first, so I will introduce you now. Marina Meerburg is an advocate for social justice in the natural world. An immigrant who moved to Vermont in 1986, she raised her children all the way through Stowe schools. She said she chose Stowe because of the strong sense of community and excellent schools, and she continues to choose it as her home. Marina graduated from the Stockholm School of Economics. She runs a translation business and is fluent in 4 languages, is a longtime ski instructor at Stowe Mountain Resort, and works closely with her husband's small business, 4 Points Mountain Bike School and Guide Service. She served on the Stowe Conservation Commission from 2008 to 2016 and was its chair for 6 of those years, and is also a Justice of the Peace. So Marina, 3 minutes.
Sorry, I think it's better if I hold it. This is the most nerve-wracking thing of the whole, is just talking into the microphone. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you all for coming. This is really exciting that we have so many people here. I want to start by thanking Stowe reporter Hannah and Tommy for moderating. I want to thank Representative Scheurmann for her service, 12 years in the House. And I think it's very important to come together like this and discuss important issues. Only by talking and listening to each other can we find solutions that work for all of us. And I must say, it's especially exciting to be here in the Stowe High School auditorium. As you heard, I have 2 kids who went through the Stowe school system, and this reminds me of middle school plays and graduations and all good memories. And of course, town meeting, right? This quirky, democratic Vermont institution that is always a highlight. Our world is changing, and we need to change with it. Given what's going on in Washington, we need to be proactive as a state and come up with real solutions. It's not enough to just keep doing what we always did. I think both I and Representative Scheurmann agree that we need to grow our economy. Where we differ is how we want to do it. We need to invest in our infrastructure. And beyond roads and bridges, we need reliable internet and cell service to attract small businesses and entrepreneurs that can thrive in Vermont. We also need to invest in families so that people want to come here and stay here. Vermont has the 3rd oldest population in the nation. And we already know how hard it is for our local businesses to find and keep employees. Affordability is a huge issue, and I think as long as there are so few of us shouldering the cost of our schools, our roads, and our government, the tax burden will be high. But it's not just taxes that make or affect affordability in Vermont. The cost of housing, childcare, healthcare, and higher education are issues that need to be addressed. We need to protect our natural world that we all appreciate so much and that our economy relies upon. We need to clean up our lakes and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Waiting isn't going to make it less costly. So that's the kind of thinking that's going to lead me as a representative in Montpelier. And it's not just thinking about this year's plan or this year's budget. I think we need to look at long-term strategic planning for a sustainable future in Vermont that serves us all. Thank you.
Those who came in, there's a seat in the front here. I also wanted to mention that tonight is being filmed by Green Mountain Access Television. It is not being live streamed right now, but will be available online in a few days. We'll make sure to link it on stowetoday.com also, so everyone can see this. Great, so next we have Representative Heidi Scheuermann of Stowe, who graduated from Stowe Public Schools and St. Louis University with a degree in education. She served in the U.S. Peace Corps as a teacher of English as a second language in Poland. She worked with the U.S. Senate on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee under the direction of Committee Chairman Senator James Jeffers. Following a 2-year sabbatical, she returned and continued with Senator Jeffers until his retirement in 2007. She has held the Lamoille-1 seat in the Vermont House representing Stowe since 2007. She's currently on the House Committee on General Housing and Military Affairs and the Canvassing Committee. She owns a property management and development business in Stowe, and she's been a member of the Stowe Rotary Club, Stowe Vibrancy, the American Council of Young Political Leaders, the National Peace Corps Association, and RPC Friends of Poland. She's also a former member and chair of the Stowe Select Board. Heidi Scheuermann.
Thank you, all of you, for being here. This is an important time, and so I know we all appreciate you being here. Thank you to the Stowe Reporter for hosting this, and it's a great turnout, and thank you to Marina for running. I know how much of a challenge this is, and I commend your work so far, and your campaign has been really great. So, for those of you who don't know me, I was born and raised here in Stowe. I went to Stowe Public Schools, graduated from them. I lived right in the village. I skated at the Jackson Arena. I skied at the mountain. I played on every public tennis and basketball court I could find, and hiked the mountains and the hills of this town throughout my life. And it's been my privilege for the past 12 years to serve as your representative in the Vermont House. I've spent those years fighting for issues important to all of us: education funding reform and property tax relief, local control of education, tourism and marketing and further investments in tourism and marketing, and policies that will encourage private sector job growth. And as our community has grown and evolved, both demographically and economically, I've been instrumental right here in Stowe and as a representative in Montpelier in ensuring we address our changing needs and priorities. So why do I want to continue to do this, and why should you support me? For that, my answer is simple. I enjoy this job as much as I did when I was first elected. And I believe that during these increasingly fractious times, having a balanced and independent voice in Montpelier is more important than ever. Especially at this time as we're starting to turn the ship of state around with sustainable spending, a growing economy, and lower taxes. We need to ensure our voice in Montpelier is one that works to diligently continue down that road, and does so by reaching across the aisle to advance sound policies. On that, my record is clear. Working with people from across the political spectrum, I've been the leading voice for education funding reform, property tax relief, and local control of education. My quest for ethics reform was a lonely one for a long time, but I persisted and was successful last year with great tripartisan support. With Democrats, Independents, and Republicans from tourist destinations from across the state, I have successfully fought year after year for additional investments in tourism and marketing, investments so crucial to this community right here. And for 4 years, former Democratic Representative Paul Wilson and I led the effort to make some of the most important changes in our economic development policies in years. Finally, I was proud to have guided through the legislature this year a bill to modify our beer franchise laws. This will allow our craft brewing sector of the economy, a thriving sector now, to get their products to market more easily. And I successfully fought against legislation that would have had a dramatic impact on our outdoor recreational industry. I'm proud of these accomplishments, but there remains a great deal more to do. The problem of our state's affordability is one we cannot tax our way out of. More taxation isn't the answer to our aging workforce, nor is it the answer to the slow erosion of our communities through the emigration of our young people. The solution to these problems requires continued economic growth and the creation of decent opportunities for all of us to live, work, and raise our families here. So as we look toward our future and see what work remains, it is absolutely critical in my view that Stowe has an experienced, independent, thoughtful voice in Montpelier that is willing and able to work across the political spectrum to develop balanced initiatives and sound public policy. I believe I'm that person. I'm proud of the economic, social, and cultural growth of our town during my time as a representative, and I promise that I will continue to protect our interests so that this community can continue to flourish. Thank you.
So next, we will ask a couple questions. We will alternate who answers first. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to respond. You'll hear the timer, and if you go for too long, I will say something. So Tommy.
Thanks for coming. We got a lot of great questions from the community. It's been a heck of a turnout, so it's really exciting to see you all here. Heidi and Marina, you've both chosen to affiliate yourself with a national political party, Republicans and Democrats. How do you reflect your national party of choice?
Who do you want to go first?
With Marina first.
Well, I am proud to call myself a Democrat, and I think if you've been following what's going on in Washington, we are, for now, the adults in the room. We and I will fight for every Vermonter, regardless of background, whether age, sexual preference, socioeconomic background. We all deserve to live a great life here in Stowe. And given what's going on nationally, we really need to be proactive here. I am frankly worried about what's going on nationally, and I can't change that, but what I can do is I can ensure that we do the right thing here in Stowe. If the right for a woman to choose was to disappear on the national scene, we may need to make sure that it's not only available, but accessible for women of all incomes. And that is one of the things that is high on the list right now. So yes, I embrace being a Democrat, and I hope you will support me in that.
Thank you. I am a proud Vermont Republican in the tradition of longtime Vermont Republicans and our tradition. Justin Smith Morrill, Bob Stafford, Jim Douglas, George Aiken. Those are the people, my mentors, and who I and how I work in Montpelier. They are the people of the Vermont Republicans led the charge on Act 250, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and every piece of education legislation in Washington in generations was led by Vermont Republicans. I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be a Vermont Republican and continue that tradition of Vermont Republicanism.
There are a few more seats in the front over here if anyone else wants to sit down. And there's 3 over here, and there's a little.
You can even play the piano if you'd like.
Yes, yeah. Are there? Actually, he can play the piano. Sorry.
We'll get in if you start playing and then you don't want to listen to us anymore.
Okay, so on this question, Heidi will answer first. One of your candidates' responsibilities will be ensuring the health of our state's economy. Can you share your ideas on how to do that?
Oh boy, 2 minutes? That's a tough one. So I'm going to try to condense it into something very simple. My economic philosophy is very simple. Encourage, reward, protect. Encourage our small business people and entrepreneurs to invest in their businesses and in their employees so that they become successful. Encourage our small business owners and entrepreneurs to to feel that to invest in their ideas, their great ideas and their innovative ideas. Reward businesses and entrepreneurs when they are successful, and when so that they can reinvest that success into their businesses and their employees, and protect our current economy and businesses, whether it's manufacturing, farming businesses, agriculture businesses, working land, businesses. I've done that throughout my career in Montpellier. That is my simple answer. There are lots of, I spent 6 years on the Economic Development Committee. I've worked on everything from the tech industry to banking to, again, outdoor recreation, tourism industry. And I think we need to continue down that road. I think a key part, and I agree with Marina on this, is telecommunications infrastructure. That is something that for years our governors have promised and to deliver, but it's not as easy as promises. We know, whether it was Governor Douglas or Governor Scheurmann, who promised statewide access. It's much more difficult than that but we can do it. And I believe if we I don't know if we can do it statewide. I mean, I should say to last mile. That's very difficult. Return on investment, when people are making those investments, is very difficult for the private sector to do. There's some community broadband programs that are possible. We have a lot of assets right here in Stowe that can work together. But that's going to be a key. That's a key portion of our of what we need to do to ensure economic success.
Thank you, Heidi.
Well, I talked about investing in infrastructure, which I think is huge. We also need to confront the fact of climate change, which I know a lot of people don't want to talk about. It just sounds like it's going to be this huge problem, and how can we do anything? We're so small. But we also have great opportunities in that field. Vermont has been a leader in green technology. There have been some obstacles lately. I feel like we've been going in the right direction. We need to keep encouraging that. We need to keep encouraging small businesses. I don't believe in corporate welfare. There was just something on the radio today about $10 million being given to Curie, and now they're laying people off, and we don't even know how much money they got or what they did with that money. So I think small businesses and entrepreneurs is what fits well with us in Vermont, our environment here. We also need to invest in people. We need to make this a place where people want to come. And I hear it all the time when I'm up on the mountain, oh, I wish I could live here. Well, again, it requires infrastructure. It requires affordable housing for our employees. The business is pretty good right now in Stowe, but I know it's a huge problem to find employees and to have them stay. And that's why we need paid family leave. That's why we need to raise the minimum wage. And I know there are many small business owners here, I'm a small business owner, that are wondering, how are we going to do this? And we're not talking about going from 10 to 15 in one fell swoop. It's a gradual increase that there's lots of proof from around the country and around the world that it actually stimulates the local economy. And that I think is something that will actually make us more attractive, that will grow our economy. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Hey, Marina, you aren't done yet. How do you solve the problem of rising statewide school costs in the face of a declining school population across the state of Vermont?
Well, it's interesting. In Stowe, we actually have an increasing population in our schools, and I got to give a shout out to the Vermont South Supervisory Union. They've done a fantastic job with cutting costs and with making our system really efficient, and we are not forced to merge. I do want to give a shout out for that. Our school board, I think, has done a tremendous job with that. We have had some big legislative changes. I think at 46, we don't know what the results of that will be yet. I'm interested in looking at how much savings there are in that, and I do think we need to give that a little bit of time to see how that works out. Given that, education is expensive, and we are getting a lot of value for the money that we spend. Vermont's K through 12 system is excellent. Where we have a problem is higher education, which is very expensive. And I think we need to take a look at that and see how we can encourage people not only to go to school here, but to stay here after graduation.
So, thank you, Tommy, for the question. As most of you, or as some of you might know, I have for 12 years fought for education funding reform in Montpelier. And for a long time, up until this past year, in fact, the majority of the legislature refused to admit there was even a problem. And that has been a real challenge. This past year, there was some discussion about changing our education funding system, some meaningful reform. That didn't happen. I will continue to do so. I will say this: we spend $1.7 billion on education for about 80,000 students. That's a huge amount of money, and it is suffocating. It is absolutely suffocating. Other legislative priorities, things like early childhood education and higher education, that we should be investing more in, and it's suffocating our municipalities. We don't have taxing capacity on the municipal level left to pay for our sidewalks, our paving, maintaining our buildings and infrastructure of the town, and actually do investments that we need to make as a community, which I think we do need to make. We absolutely need to reform the system so that people are connected to the votes. We need to reconnect Vermonters better to the votes to the budgets they vote on and the money they spend. Right now, that disconnect is there. While our community has done an exceptional job, I commend the school board for their work throughout the years on ensuring the spending is in line, is at the average, and I commend them to the school board. But at the same time, when you see Burlington moving forward with a 10% increase when their budget is millions, that impacts our statewide property tax and the rates that we pay. So when that disconnect, when people aren't connected to when people who are voting on the budgets are not connected to the money they have to spend for that spending, it's a recipe for disaster. It is the locals are raising the money and then giving the invoices to the state. It's essentially like my sister having my checkbook down in Miami Beach. That is just a recipe for absolute disaster. Sorry, Rebecca, if you have to do this. It is a recipe for disaster, and we can see that has happened. And again, it's suffocating both our municipalities and other legislative priorities that we can put in, that we can invest in the general fund.
30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Okay, so I just want to say I agree. It is expensive, and people need to know what their vote means in terms of higher taxes. The way not to do that is to use one-time money like the governor did last year to artificially lower the cost of education, lowering the property tax for second homeowners. That is not local control. That is not making people understand what their vote on it means. Thank you.
So Heidi will answer this one first, again related to education. Vermont has one of the highest teacher-to-pupil ratios, or pupil-to-teacher ratios in the country. What are your thoughts on Vermont's class sizes?
Again, I've been a fierce advocate for local control, and I think if people are connected to the budgets, and reconnected to the budgets better, those decisions will be made organically. They will be made as you decide whether or not you're going to vote on a particular budget or for a particular program in the school, and for our school budgets. And it gives the school board a much greater opportunity to allow people to educate us as voters on what it's going to do and what it's going to bring and what opportunities it's going to give our students. I do not believe in a state mandate of teacher-pupil ratio. I fight against state mandates all the time, and that has, in addition to all sorts of other things, is what's brought us spending to what it is. I will just say, with regard, I just want to respond to the previous comment with regards to the veto of the governor on the budget. It was essentially we have a surplus. We had a surplus in the general fund of $70 million. First time we've had a surplus in a decade. And what he was trying to do was ensure that non-residential property owners didn't see a property tax increase this year. And yes, I absolutely stood with him on that. 65% of non-homestead properties are owned by Vermonters. It is not just second homeowners. 65% is owned by Vermonters, and that tax increase that was going to go on to Vermonters. So just want to be clear about that. So yes, I did fight to try to make sure that those non-residential property tax didn't go up either this year, and I stand behind that vote.
So the question was a ratio of teachers to students. And yes, that is definitely an issue. And the problem is that when you have a small school, what do you cut? You cut the math teacher, you cut the, gym teacher. I think cooperations and supervisory unions, if you can share teachers, that is one way to do it. We got to remember that schools are kind of the heart of our communities. And I totally agree with Heidi about local control. And if you take a school away from a community, it usually affects their property values quite considerably. So more use of common resources, I think, is one way of doing it. I don't believe in mandating a certain ratio because, like I said, that doesn't work for all schools. What do you cut? But working together, as the Lamoille Supervisory Union has done to a great degree, I think is a recipe for success.
All right, speaking of you, Marina, what is your solution to high property taxes in Vermont?
Oh boy,
Easy one, right?
if I could give a 2-minute answer to that, I think I'd have everybody's vote. Yeah, property taxes are high, and I think a big part of that is, of course, the school tax. There has been talk about changing that to an income tax, but there are issues with that as well. The income tax in Vermont tends to vary a lot from year to year, so my understanding is that that is an uncertain way of funding it. And we actually already have income sensitivity. I think it's up to 147,000 in income. You get a rebate on your property taxes. Of course, it doesn't help if you're right over that limit. And in general, I think if we can avoid the so-called cliffs in our system of aid and make it a slope, that makes a whole lot more sense. You should always pay to work harder. You should always pay to make more money. So those drop-off cliffs are problematic. What we can do locally, that is really up to the select board. As I said, for making more efficient use of our educational resources, that is something that I will take a really hard look at. I don't have 12 years experience, but I'm absolutely committed to solving these difficult issues. And I welcome input from everybody in the community on those issues, because I think when we put our heads together, we can accomplish amazing things.
Yep. So I will just reiterate, the quest for education funding reform has been a long-term project of mine, and it's a real challenge. What we saw with Act 60, you know, the Brigham decision required that each student receive that there be substantially equal educational opportunity throughout the state for all students. That's great. That's great. I agree with the Brigham decision. The challenge was they didn't define what substantially equal educational opportunity was, and so the legislature in 1997 put forward Act 60. And Act 60 moved us from a complete local decision-making and local funding of our schools and our school district to a statewide system. It's a statewide property tax rate, tax now. And again, the disconnect between what voters vote on for that and what they spend is what is causing the statewide property tax to increase and significantly. So spending is increasing, but they're not connected to paying for that. People are not connected as well to paying for that. And so our statewide property tax goes up. So I believe strongly that we need to reform the system in a meaningful way. I think there is a way to maintain, within the Brigham decision, to change the system so that it is not a statewide property tax, that it might be something else, or we reduce the statewide property tax completely. But in order to do that, again, we need to have people connected to the budget so that spending is under control. But what we did, we moved from a complete local control of our spending and we're going to do a statewide property tax. I believe there's some place in the middle, once we define what substantially equal educational opportunity is, that we can meet the demands and lower property taxes in the long term, and certainly curb the increases in our property taxes. And in that, by doing that, I believe strongly that we can see further investments in early childhood education that's absolutely necessary, in higher education that's absolutely necessary, and as a former select board member and chair, will allow municipalities to invest in our communities the way we need to, and maintain our infrastructure the way we need to. The select board has done an admirable job throughout the years of ensuring our municipal growth is within the grand list. And they, I believe, continue to do that. And I think that that's important. But again, it's the statewide property tax education funding has suffocated our municipalities to such an extent that we have some crumbling infrastructure. So,
Thank you. So we're going to pivot away from education and property taxes. Yes. Here's an easy one. Both of you say that you support a woman's right to choose. Can you please detail how you will protect that right for women in Vermont?
I go first?
Heidi goes first.
Heidi goes first.
Yes.
so I don't know what I need to say in detail, but I support a woman's right to choose, support all the laws on the books. I don't support any changes to the laws, and will continue to do what I need to do to ensure that that is maintained.
Great.
So currently, we don't have a law in Vermont that protects a woman's right to choose. It is based on a court case, and how well that court case will stand up. Our Attorney General T.J. Donovan is looking into that. If it's not sufficient, we need to legislate to ensure that women in Vermont have the right to make reproductive decisions. I can assure you that I will be a vote for that. We also besides keeping it legal, we need to ensure that there is funding for Planned Parenthood, that there is funding so that women who need to make a very difficult decision to end a pregnancy can do that. And I just want to put out, nobody is for abortions, okay? That is a very difficult choice that some women have to do. And the woman is the only one who can make this decision. You can legislate away the right to legal abortions, but you cannot legislate away abortions. They will then happen illegally, which would be really making a tragedy even worse. So that's what I would do. I really believe that this is incredibly important. And the thought that some white old men in Washington would dictate what we do with our bodies is frankly offensive.
Thank you both. A very pointed question. This one came from a reader. With what you know as of today, would you support Brett Kavanaugh's appointment to the Supreme Court? Marina, you can answer.
I think you can guess my answer. No, I wouldn't. And I do believe Ms. Ford when she says that what happened did happen. Even if she's wrong, even if it turns out that Kavanaugh is cleared of this, I think he completely disqualified himself in his self-entitled outburst, conspiracy theory. That is not the right mentality for being on our Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court should be revered. I know that judges and Supreme Court justices will of course hold political views, but they have to keep those in check. We cannot start having overtly partisan people on the Supreme Court. It's a threat to our democracy, and frankly, it scares the heck out of me.
I'm running for the Vermont House. I'm running for re-election to the Vermont House. I think what is happening in Washington right now is ugly. It's sad, and it's an exceptional disappointment for me. I'm somebody who worked down there for a number of years. It is party politics at its worst, and something for party politics that I have stayed away from throughout my entire career. And I'm not going to start now. If you want that behavior in Montpelier, then you shouldn't vote for me.
You're not answering the question.
Somebody said you're not answering the question.
It's not debating, it's just debating.
Please, this is like we said. Yes, the questions are from the moderator. Please remain civil. Let's keep this. We're a nice, pleasant community. That said, do you want to respond to that, or you don't have to?
I responded to the question, Tom.
Thank you. And you're up again. It's related actually. Heidi, as a longtime Republican representative, and Marina as a longtime Democratic activist, what are the 3 issues on which you have publicly disagreed with your party?
How many?
Just 3.
I have throughout my career, I have demonstrated my independence. I represent the people of Stowe. I don't represent a political party. I don't represent any special interest group. I go after issues independently, and I study them, and I learn about them, and decide for the people of Stowe, on your behalf, what is in your best interests. With regard to publicly, obviously in 2009, I voted in favor of same-sex marriage. I was the first Republican House member to do so. I voted on in the Judiciary Committee. I'm proud to do that. I was decided to vote to override the Republican governor's veto that year. And it might now not sound as important as it was back then, and as big of a deal as it was back then, but it was a big deal in 2009 to do just that, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I got the National Law Cabinet Republican Uncommon Courage Award for that vote, so that was an important one, and I'm proud of that civil rights legislation that I helped to pass. The gun reform laws that went into effect this year, I voted in favor of those, stood with Governor Scott in his efforts to do that. I was the sole, a number of years ago with Democratic Representative Paul Ralston, we founded the Vision to Action Vermont Political Action Committee, to which we gave money and endorsements from us, from both of us, to Democrats, Republicans, and Independents from throughout the state of Vermont. We gave significant monies to Democrats who were running for the legislature. That was something that was unheard of at the time, and I got a lot of flack for it from my Republican colleagues. I was supporting Democratic colleagues who were running against Republicans. That was tough, but it was important, we thought, to have balance in Montpelier for economic development initiatives. So we spent, over $30,000 supporting candidates, Republican, Democrat, and Independent candidates from throughout Vermont. So, and I'm proud of that. So those are the three that come to mind right now.
So that's difficult. I have a lot of agreements with the Democrats, and Heidi, I got to ask you, yes, and thank you for voting for gun reform this year. I really appreciate that. I do think that was the right decision, but you voted against it in 2017, and you told me you had no choice. You couldn't.
Marina, can you answer the question first before?
So I got to come up with three things that I don't agree with. Well, there are several things. I think Democrats have been, in some cases, too much for corporate welfare. I don't believe in corporate welfare. I don't think the Democrats earlier have stood up enough for the regular people, for the ones on the front line. And I think that may be part of why we are in the situation we are now. I think they have been tone deaf at times, but right now I'm proud to stand with Democrats.
Do you want me to, should I answer the question of Marina's, please?
Sure, yeah, let's do that.
Sure. Throughout my career, I've never taken pledges of, no tax pledge or no gun reform pledge or anything like that from any special interest group. So throughout my years on the issue of gun laws and reforming those gun laws, I've always consistently said that I've always been open to them. The one caveat is that they pass constitutional muster, both in terms of our U.S. Constitutional and Second Amendment, and in terms of Article 16 of the Vermont Constitution. There was a bill last year that went through that changed this year as a result of my opposition to it last year and a few others and other people in opposition that did not have the due process provisions in it that this year's bill did. It was a bill that would have seized weapons, guns specifically from a person at an instance as an incident of domestic violence. But there was no provision for those weapons to be returned. This year's bill, in my view, passed constitutional muster. It said within 1 business day, the person would be arraigned, and the judge would decide whether or not the weapons could be returned to the individual or not. That is the reason I voted against the bill last year, and that is the reason why I talked to the advocates of that bill, and we got it changed this year so that we have the constitutional protections in there. So I stand behind both of those votes.
I still question why you didn't work for those changes in 2017. I do remember your response was.
We did work for them. It just wasn't accepted by the proponents of the bill.
Really?
We're going to move on to the next question now.
Yes.
This one is for Marina. This is shaping up to be a fairly big money race, at least as far as your typical Vermont House contests go. There's over $48,000 coming in thus far as of Monday, $33,000 for Heidi and about $15,000 for Marina. My question is, what do you get for that money, and what do your contributors get?
So some of that money goes to the Stowe reporter, I think.
The ad department, to be very, very
A lot of it.
In general, I think there is way too much money in politics. I wish it was that way. Yes, we do need some money for printed materials, for ads, and so on and so forth. But really, the risk is that people will buy influence, of course. I think there should be maybe stricter limits than we have. At this point, you know, you can give, an individual can give up to $1,020. I won't sell my soul for that. I don't think Heidi will either. But I think there's a lot of energy out there. I didn't set out intending to raise that much money, frankly. I didn't think I could, I didn't think I would. I think that money can be much better spent on other issues. There are so many things that needs attention in our society. And if I end up with money left over, I am seriously considering donating that to a charitable cause. There are so many things we need to do here, right here and stuff.
Thank you, Tom. I'm obviously proud and flattered and humbled by the support I've received from people throughout this community, financially and otherwise. I've worked hard for 12 years on behalf of this community, and I think that support reflects that work. So where it goes is, there's campaigns have changed drastically in 12 years, I will tell you that, and we have become much more expensive. But it goes to typical, marketing, online, social media, newspapers, printed materials. It goes to all sorts of things like that. But again, I'm proud of the support I've received from this community and people in this community. And I think what they are hoping to get with their support is my re-election. So we'll see. We're hopeful.
Question about other people's money. What is your stance, get back to local, what's your stance on the sidewalk project and the burying of the power lines project in Stowe, each to be voted on separately on November 6th? And we'll start with Heidi on this one.
Sure. So, as some of you know, and as was mentioned earlier, I am a founding member of Stowe, a downtown organization that has worked throughout since 2009. It was formed, worked throughout the years to really ensure our village is vital and vibrant and a destination of its own. In addition, as the expansion was happening up the mountain, we thought a lot of us on the select board and then in the community thought it important to really focus some efforts on the village, and we've done that. One of our longtime things has been both sidewalk replacement and infrastructure improvement down there, and the relocation of the utility lines. And that has been a long time in the making. I haven't seen the final proposal yet. I don't think that I've seen it, but I got the gist, and I have some of the original things. But this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I know it's going to be tough, and I know there's a lot of concern about the price. But this is our opportunity to both. We must redo the sidewalks first of all. They have to be ADA compliant. They are not right now. They have to be accessible. They are a mess. They are a liability, in my view. And at the same time, we have the opportunity to relocate our utility lines. So I myself will be probably voting for it. It's been again, but it's a tough nut. I understand that with regard to our taxing capacity. But in this particular instance, it's our only shot at this. I don't think we'll get another opportunity. So I myself, I know it's going to be difficult for some people, but I think everybody needs to make up their own. Really look at it and understand what the impact might be.
Well, Heidi, I agree with you. I think replacing our sidewalks is really important. We do need to be ADA compliant, but it's more than that. It's also the safety of our children. It is for our businesses that people can get to them and spend their money, which we want them to do, right? So I am going to be voting for the new sidewalks. I can't tell you how to vote, but I am definitely for it. Burying the power lines, I have not made a decision on that one yet. I encourage you all to look at the cost and the benefits and make up your own mind. I'm sure you're all smart people and you'll figure it out. Thank you.
So we have one final question, and then we'll open up the floor to the audience. If people want to start lining up.
All right, the microphone for the audience is over there if anybody wants to make their way down there. This one is for Marina. Marina, after the legalization of marijuana this year, do you support moving toward a tax and regulate system for marijuana?
Yes, I am for it. So to have cannabis be legal to grow and to have, but not to sell, I think is not a workable situation. We need to regulate it, and we should tax it. We've been talking a lot about taxes here, and this is an opportunity to find an income, a sustainable income through that. And that money can also be used to educate, because we know cannabis is not good for young growing brains. And I think we need a campaign to not only talk to young people, but also to parents about the perils of that. So yes, I am absolutely for regulating and taxing cannabis.
So I have had concerns about the legalization in general of marijuana, but knowing that it was going to pass, and that there was and that the bill that was going to pass was, in my mind, not the appropriate way to do it. I believe that, so I will just say this, at some point it becomes about governing. As much as you might oppose it, as long as it's going to happen, it becomes about governing and making sure that when it does happen, that we do it right, and we do it so that it's safe, and that both the product and the public health is ensured, health and safety is ensured. So indeed, I supported last year the amendment to tax and regulated system, and would do that again. I think it's important, as long as it's legal, that it be regulated, that the product be safe, that it is sold in a regulated way. And right now, I don't think the law that's in place is the best, and it's the most sound public policy. I do agree with Marina, though, as we do this, we need to ensure the safety on our roads. We need to ensure public safety in general, and we need to ensure a really robust educational campaign for students and young people and parents, and everybody in between. I think it needs to be a very robust system in place to do that.
Thank you. So now we have about 30 minutes for audience questions, and at the end of that, we'll give them a closing statement. You can ask a question of one or both candidates, and if you ask just one, the other one will have an opportunity to make a rebuttal or to give their opinion. So it looks like we have a question.
My question is for both candidates. My name is Rebecca, and I have a question for both candidates. How do you feel, and what will your next step be about LGBTQIA rights?
Who do you want to answer first? Okay. I'm happy to go first. That is an issue that I think is really important. And again, we're talking about the state of Vermont, but our national politics affects us here. We don't live in a bubble. And there has been some really scary rhetoric. There has been violence about transgender people, against gay people. And we're all people at heart, and we need to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone. And I will be a strong proponent of protecting those rights. There's been a really disturbing trend of dividing people into groups, into tribes. But we really are all one, especially here. We're a small community. We all gotta get along. Heidi and I get along. We have different ideas, but we get along fine. And but we gotta make sure that everybody is taken care of, and that involves the LGBTQ. Am I missing a letter? I'm sorry, but that we really care about that community. It also goes, I would say, beyond that. It goes to racial backgrounds. We're a very white state, as you know, and I don't know if you saw the SNL skit, which was extremely funny, but somewhat unnerving. And there is movement now, and that's encouraging to deal with these with these issues. What comes to mind is Kia Morris, the representative, the African American representative, the only one we had, who felt forced to resign from the legislature, which is really a tragedy.
Thank you, Rebecca, for the question. So I would just say I've been an ardent supporter throughout my years in public office of civil rights for all, including the LGBTQ community. Like I said before, I was the first Republican House member to vote in favor of same-sex marriage and vote against the Republican governor's veto to ensure that that piece of civil rights legislation went into law. I voted in favor of banning conversion therapy I forget what year that was. I voted in favor this year of the law that ensures that single bathrooms are gender neutral, and will continue to ensure that that the rights of all are protected and that we ensure the opportunities for all are there. So thank you.
A little bit taller. That's okay. So my name is Liz Stowe, and I just want to commend both of you, particularly as women, for being up here and running. We have yet to have a question regarding the environment, and nobody would be surprised that I'm the one who's going to ask that. I think I was up here in March asking some similar questions at a town meeting, particularly in regard to climate change. If we don't address this issue, we're in deep trouble. And I guess what I want to know, I feel like since Phil Scott's been in office, there have been very few steps forward. And what I want to know, particularly from Heidi, is what top 3 things do you think really need to happen, and what role in the past have you played in really addressing the issue of climate change for Vermont? Because I don't know, and I really want to know.
Thank you. Mostly to your answer.
Mostly to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Oh, okay, good. Okay, so thank you for the question. I was born and raised here in Stowe, and an environmentalist. I support ensuring that we are good stewards of our environment. I do it myself, both in my business and in my personal life, and want to ensure that continues. We have a proud tradition here in Vermont of doing that, and I want to ensure that continues. I voted in favor of the renewable energy standards bill that established the goals that we have in place for the 90% renewables by 2050. Those are goals, obviously. I supported that. I supported the water quality bill this past year. With regard to the carbon tax and a price on carbon that is being promoted and advocated for, indeed, I am not supporting that. And I'm not supporting it for a number of reasons. Vermont has the lowest carbon emissions in the country, out of every state by far. We have the lowest carbon emissions in the country. To put a price, to increase the tax on Vermonters with regard to fuel oil that is brought to your home to heat, and the gasoline tax, to the extent that the exit plan would do that, is really unfair, especially to rural Vermonters. To put the onus of our climate change challenges, which I agree, we have challenges, but to put the onus of solving the world's climate change problems on the backs of rural Vermonters, I don't think it's fair. We don't have a public transportation system in place that will allow for people to get to work. We have people, carpenters and others, builders, who depend upon vehicles that they travel from all over, from here to other places, from the Northeast Kingdom to here, to do their work. To put a significant gas tax increase on those rural Vermonters is not appropriate right now, and I don't think sound public policy. I
would like to address that issue as well. You know, the environment is near and dear to my heart, and I totally agree with Liz that we need to do something. That our emissions are the lowest in the country is not too surprising since we're about the smallest state in the country. We need to take action, and we need to find alternatives such as more public transportation, more bike lanes, more alternative energies, which is also an opportunity. Waiting on climate change is not going to make it easier, and the United States already spends enormous amounts mitigating the effects of climate change, such as we just saw in North Carolina. Puerto Rico comes to mind. When it comes to carbon tax, the current proposal, I don't agree with. I think it does put too much burden on rural Vermonters. We can't increase the cost of transportation without offering alternatives. I think that would be particularly difficult for Stowe, where we have a lot of people who commute to work here. But having said that, we do need to address this issue. And like I said earlier, it's not just taxes that affects affordability in Vermont. Since Trump took office, the cost of gasoline has gone up 20%. That has nothing to do with taxes. That is probably a bigger burden on rural Vermonters than carbon tax would be. Having said that, the current proposal for a carbon tax, I do not support. I do think we need to work with our other New England states. I think we need to think regionally in order to accomplish the goals that absolutely have to be met. And just to clarify, now I'm out of time, the 90% goal that we have for 90% renewable by 2050, we are falling short by far. Those goals are already established. It is time to take the appropriate action to reach those goals.
I'm Beth Gavin, and two things. One, if this town is really concerned about their carbon, right, then perhaps you put your children on the big yellow bus that drives by every day. And has 5 children. And every parent is driving their kids to school every single day. It's absurd. So there's a carbon impact you can have. My question, though, is, so I think everybody, if you're familiar, if you read the story reporter last week, or you just happen to own a business or go to a business in this town, we are in a crisis mode, and I'm not exaggerating that, with the number of non-employees that we have. We don't have employees. I have me at my store and Gail, who's 82. And that's what I got, because today I had the third no-show for an interview. And it's killing us. Stores are closing, the Carneys is closing, the Wick is closing, everybody is closing, because there is no entry-level workers. And so as community members, I'd like to know your opinions on what can be done about that. And before we go too much further, I would like to say that the majority of businesses in this town are paying 14 to 16 already, and no one's coming through the door. Or, I don't know, it's a millennial weird work ethic thing. I don't know what to say, but it's frustrating, and it's a real issue. So taking that minimum wage raised to 15 aside, because that's not the issue really, because that's what's being offered now. What are your solutions or suggestions?
So thank you, Beth, for that question. And I know it's an enormous issue, and I'm glad you brought that up. As you said, the $50 is not an issue. Well, in Stowe, it's not that much of an issue because most of you pay that already. I think it's a fairness issue. If we got that across the state, that would be, that would help. However, affordability is a lot more than just the wage. And if minimum wage had kept pace with inflation, it would actually be $22 an hour now. The problem is that we don't have enough workers, and I think housing is a huge part of that. I think we actually do have a housing crisis. We have lots of nice new condos going up, but we have very little affordable housing. And that's not just an issue in Stowe, it's a statewide issue. That's not going to solve your problem next week, Beth. I'm sorry about that. I'm a little busy, or I can come help you out. I don't have a short-term answer to that, but I think in the long term, we need to make sure that the people who grow up here stays here. I think in addition to college and affordable college, I think we need to focus on vocational training, and it needs to be reasonable to work a job without after high school education, higher education, and that I think raising the minimum wage will help with. But I wish I had an answer for you how to solve this immediately. I don't. But it's, I think this has been brewing for some time. And one thing that I do think is very important is long-term planning. We need to, as a state, look 10, 20 years down the road so that we're not caught up in trying to catch up with problems. Again, Beth, I'm sorry, that's not going to help you in your store next week, but I think we don't do enough long-term strategic planning, and we need to start doing that.
So, thanks, Beth. I have been hearing a lot, obviously, from numerous people for the last, actually, long time. It's not just in last week's paper. As such, I've been working to try to get some resources. So short term, to try to get resources for folks in this business community to see if there are workers available and see if we can get them connected to our businesses. That includes things like, I don't think our community has a really good grasp of what is available out there for resources. I think that's a challenge. I think I can do better there, and we'll do so. But in general, I don't think our community understands what resources are available at both rehab, for example, at the Department of Labor, for example, to connect people, job seekers with with employers. And I've been working with Rachel and Amy to try to connect that. The Department of Tourism and Marketing is now involved, and they're going to reconstitute this tourism working group, tourism industry working group that deals with these workforce issues, the workforce working group. But in general, there was a workforce meeting all morning this morning, which I'm sure you couldn't attend. But it was at GMTCC, and if I'm not mistaken, some representatives from Stowe area were there. So I urge you to reach out to them to see if they found any ways to connect job seekers to your particular opportunities. Long term, it is a huge issue. It's a huge issue throughout the state. Actually, it's not just us. It is. So the short term is one thing, but then there's sort of a three-pronged approach, I think, to workforce issues in general, and I've worked for years on workforce development issues. There's a three-pronged approach. One is training necessary to ensure our employees, our potential employees, are ready for the job, retraining those employees so that they're ready for the new jobs that are available. And then there's a really important aspect that we can do right here. And that is ensuring that people in this community, and especially our students, our older students, know the opportunities out there, and that there are opportunities for actual careers. It's not necessarily just a seasonal job or anything like that. There are opportunities for careers. So I've met with the Department of the new Secretary of the Department of Education. He talked to me about a They talked to me about a program that's happening in southern Vermont, in Windham County. All 4 public schools, high schools, are coming together with the Economic Development Corporation down there. And they did a study, I'm sorry, really quickly, this is important. They did a study, 2 studies 5 years ago. In 2013, one was an in-depth study of 60 of their largest employers to figure out staffing levels, what their needs are, were then and will be later on. And then a more general survey for all the tourism industry, which also talked about staffing levels. And they figured out that they were going to be in trouble in 4 years. So they put into place a whole 4-year program, and this is the final year of that, or not the final year, but this is when they're instituting this Pipelines for Pathways program with all of these public high schools getting involved with the Economic Development Corporation. And so I think that might be a long-term plan and a way to move forward. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to the school board about it, but I mentioned it to Roger yesterday. So anyway, that's what I think this is.
We have time for one more audience question.
My daughter will let me write her question. You guys both talk about being for different types of paid family leave. Heidi, you talk about it being optional. Marina, you talk about it being statewide and mandatory. Can you guys please speak to the audience about how that difference would play out? Thank you.
I'm not as cute as my daughter.
I think it's me.
I think it's Heidi's turn to go first.
Sure. So there's a proposal, and it actually went through as a bill this year for a mandatory mandated paid family leave program for Vermont. What it did was it provides, the program is an insurance program that will provide paid family leave to employees in Vermont who qualify for it. It would provide 70% of your weekly wage for 12 weeks. That was the bill. And it would be paid for by a 0.136% increase in payroll tax on every Vermont employee. Whether or not that Vermont employee would qualify later on at some point for that program is not necessary. It's that employee would be paying for the program. I will just say that there's all sorts of reasons, but number one reason is it's completely unsustainable. It will fall down on itself. The person making $40,000 will pay $54 per year into this insurance fund. Yet that same person would qualify for $6,400 and some odd dollars per year every 12 months. It will collapse on itself. There's no way that is sustainable. So it would be required. What would be required is an increase, a significant increase in the payroll tax on Vermont employees, and possibly a payroll tax on the Vermont employers in order to fund that program. I just think we cannot right now, at a time when we're finally trying to turn when we're succeeding in sustainable spending, lower taxes, and better economic growth. This is not the time to add a very large state program to our tax rolls. It's just not the time to do it. I will also say that, well, it's unsustainable. So and the kind of taxes that would be needed to maintain the program would be significant.
So I disagree with your math, Heidi. The reason the program is sustainable is because everybody will. I need a little more. Is because everybody would be paying into it, and it is very affordable, yes. Everybody will not take advantage of this. Everybody will certainly not take advantage of it every year, but it is certainly a way to save money and to allow people to have where they can spend time with a newborn or an adopted child, where they can stay home if their child is sick, You shouldn't have to choose between feeding your child because you go to work or staying home. 70% is still a cut, but I absolutely would believe we need this program. It is not a cost on employers, and it is very affordable. For somebody on minimum wage, I think it's less than $1 a week. And, you know, that also creates a bond between the employer and the employee. If you know that you are taken care of in a small business, you're going to do everything you can to help that business out. So it only works if it is mandatory. The same way our health insurance programs only work if everybody is part of the pool. That's the basis behind an insurance program. So I do disagree with you, Heidi. I don't think it's unsustainable. I think it is a sustainable and a very necessary program. It's been shown, for example, in California where they have this, and there's even actually, hallelujah, bipartisan talk about a paid family leave federally. We'll see if it goes anywhere. But in California, when they instituted this, they actually reduced the cost of stays in nursing homes, I think by 11%, but it could be wrong on the percentage. So these are sound economic programs. And I definitely vote for it.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to allow about 3 minutes for a closing statement from each of the candidates. Marina went first on opening, so Heidi will go first on closing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make mine short, because everybody wants to leave, I see. That's fine. Thank you again to Anna and Tommy for doing this, and to Marina, of course. It was a great discussion. I learned a lot. It was great. And thank you to all of you for coming. As I said in my opening, I'm proud of the work I've done on your behalf through my years in the Vermont House, but there remains a lot more to do, and I stand ready to do it. From my continued fight for education funding reform, property tax relief, and tourism and marketing investments, to ensuring we address our demographic and workforce challenges, and creating better opportunities for workforce and professional housing, to telecommunications infrastructure. I remain committed to doing all I can on behalf of the people and community of Stowe. Stowe is my hometown. It's the place I love. And if given the opportunity and the privilege to serve you again, I will continue my fierce advocacy on your behalf. Thanks.
So I think by now it's pretty clear that both Heidi Scheuermann and I want what's best for Stowe. We just have very different visions of how to get there. And I also have made Stowe my home. This is where I live. This is where I've chosen to live. Because of my work, I could be anywhere in the world, and sometimes people say, why do you stay here? Well, I stay here because of our community. I stay here because of our wonderful mountains. And I stay here because it's my home. This is where I raised my family. And what I want to do is work with the legislature to ensure that the laws we enact for Vermont are laws that are in the interest of Stowe. Being a community member here, it is a citizen legislature. I am a citizen, and I dearly thank you for your service, but I do believe it's time for a change. It's time for a new perspective. It's time to make some long-reaching plans for a future and an economy that will serve all of us. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, Anna and Tom.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to Stowe High School for providing the space Access TV for filming this. As soon as it's available online, we will share that at stowetoday.com and in our paper next week. Thank you to Representative Heidi Scheuermann and to Marina Meerburg so much, and thank you all for coming.